Bills Mafia, what's going on? Welcome to Buffalo Late Night. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Bills, the Jets, big Monday night matchup, as well as tonight's opening NFL match. Let's get into it. Bills Mafia, what is going on? Welcome. Happy Thursday. Good evening. It's been a weird weather day here in Western New York. It was pouring a few hours ago and raining and sunny and humid, and this weather's been all over the place. But I'm glad you're here. Glad you've joined us tonight on Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. We got a good show. Big night. It's the opening night in the NFL. I think everybody is feeling it. We are here. We're back. We're feeling lively. I think it's been a long off season, especially for Bills fans. It's been an off season, man. But I'm your host, Thomas DeLoss. I'm glad that you've chosen to hang out with us this evening. Thank you for tuning in. If you are listening right now on Spotify, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify, YouTube. And if you're on Twitter right now, come on over. Come join us. Join the fun. Get in on the conversation. We'd love to have you. We're going to be talking all about the big matchup Monday as well as tonight. Also, if you are on our YouTube page right now, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification button. It'll let you know every single time one of our Cover One shows go live. You can also hit that super chat button if you've got anything important to say or you want to jump into the conversation. Now, guys, we are officially, I know I keep saying it, we're only officially a couple days away, but we're officially 4 days away from the Bills' first game of the season. So we are, locked and loaded. We are ready to go. So make sure you subscribe to the Cover One Pass. Make sure you're getting the best analysis, the best coverage, all the best content from all of our team here at Cover One. Now tonight, we do have one half of the Going Deep podcast. That is Mr. Mike Bunt. What's going on, man?
What's going on, Tom? Nice to be on the show. And finally, we're going to have some football here tonight and then the Bills in just a few days.
I know. I'm very quite, I don't even know how to put it into words, but I've been all anxious today waiting for not only this show, but just for football. I think we've all, with bated breath, we've needed football. I know football for a lot of people has been kind of the reprieve, whether it was COVID or anything else in people's lives. So, and this year has been wild for me alone, but I know we're all very, very excited to get deep into it. What's your thoughts about today?
Yeah, it's an interesting game to start off the season. Detroit versus Kansas City. Normally you would think this is a horrible matchup, but I'm actually kind of intrigued by this matchup tonight. The Lions ended last year strong. I have them as a playoff team this year. The NFC North Division champs in my preseason predictions. So I do think this Lions team is one that's going to take a step forward this year. Are they able to compete with Kansas City, though? That's a tough one to answer. Even without Travis Kelce playing, I would still expect the Chiefs to win this game. But it should be a fun one, and hopefully we have a close one that goes down to the wire.
For sure, and we will absolutely get into it later tonight. Now, first, Mike, let's hear from Aaron Quinn and Greg Thompson about the Cover One Pass.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
all for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
There you go, guys. Make sure you guys are going ahead and signing up for Cover One Pass. Fantastic content, whether it's the Slack channel, really any one of the great shows. I mean, you got Mike right here from the Going Deep podcast. We got Greg Tomsat Sports Show, the Cover One Roundup. There's tons of stuff on the Cover One team, so make sure you're checking that out. But let's get into it. Let's get into tonight's two main topics. Obviously, with everything going on, where this may go a little shorter than the usual Buffalo late night, but that's fine because football takes priority. But let's get into it. Mike, obviously, Monday's matchup's huge. This is the beginning of another very important season for the Buffalo Bills, a season that, with massive expectations, big additions, a lot of things that have kind of trend in the right direction for the Buffalo Bills. We are going against the New York Jets in a very anticipated AFC East matchup. What are your thoughts heading in initially to Monday night's big game?
Yeah, I'm pumped for Monday night, and I am so excited to have a big marquee matchup right off the bat. I'm not talking because it's on prime time. I'm talking about two teams that I have as the favorites to contend for the AFC division crown, and we're going to see it right away. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, how does it look? How does it feel? Are they going to have chemistry early on? Are they going to need time to adjust? And if I'm a Bills fan, I'm excited that this is the opening matchup for the Jets because we don't know what version of the Jets we're even going to see at this point in time. I think it's going to be a little bit of a transition period for New York to get things going, get things off the ground. So if I'm a Bills fan, I look at this as an opportunity to basically get an early season win against what will be one of your primary competitors in your division.
Yeah, the big talking point for a lot of people is with the Bills, obviously, that we're going against Aaron Rodgers and that the Jets are a team that we couldn't beat, or we couldn't beat, the likes of who they had. I think at this point, what you're looking at is a team that has been very quiet this offseason. The Buffalo Bills are, or at least have a tendency of being very quiet. But I feel like they're very, very quiet this offseason. They've been doing their work. I mean, Josh Allen, the big talking point about him was he spent this offseason focused. He spent this offseason getting his mind right, doing all things. I mean, obviously there were some extracurricular activities that went on that, the media like to kind of dabble in with Josh Allen. But you saw a different approach from this team this year. Even in training camp, this team seemed ultra focused. And this matchup Monday night is, just like you said, not only a great litmus test, but it's a great opportunity for the Bills to get going fast. I think people are looking at this Jets team, and there are some nice additions, Aaron Rodgers being the marquee one. But the big thing about this is you don't really know who they are. And I think one of the big things, Mike, if you want to talk about, their offensive line is a massive question mark. We know, with like the likes of Mekhi Becton and, Elijah Vera Tucker and even, the absence of now George Fant, who's no longer with the Jets, they were, a big reason why the Jets just could not get anything going last year. What are your thoughts about the Jets and, potential woes that they might run into?
Yeah, you mentioned their offensive line. That's definitely a huge question mark for them entering the season, as it is for the Bills and Dolphins as well. All three top contenders in the AFC East have issues on their offensive line. So how will that fare against a Bills defensive line playing without Von Miller? Whoever wins that matchup, that could be a key in this contest on Monday night. But I think the biggest questions for the Jets going into this year is how long of a transition period is it going to take for Aaron Rodgers to get things going? Because I don't have any doubts that he eventually will have the Jets playing quality football. It's just that they have a very difficult start to the year as far as their schedule. And are they going to be able to battle through that with a respectable mark? Or are they going to fall behind the 8-ball before things really even get to the midseason point? If Aaron Rodgers and the Jets offense can put up points from early on in the year, they could be potentially very dangerous overall. in the AFC East. Now, I'd like to compare it a lot to what Tom Brady did with Tampa Bay. Brady struggled the first half of his first season with Tampa. They were 7-5 through 12 games. Then they got on a roll and they didn't lose another game the rest of the way, going on to win the Super Bowl against Kansas City. Will it take Aaron Rodgers and the Jets that long to get things rolling? He does have Nate Hackett as his offensive coordinator, who he had success with in Green Bay. He brought in some of his receivers that he has continuity with in Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb. So there are familiar faces to Aaron Rodgers that could make this a little bit quicker than what it would be for a normal transition. But we'll just have to wait and see how that works. And going up against the Bills defense week one is not the ideal matchup for the Jets and a team that is trying to make that transition, especially against a coaching staff on the Bills that is known for what they bring to the defensive table, and a defense that might even have some new things to it this season. So Rodgers' last 2 years, he's struggled in his season openers. I think there's a chance that could continue Monday night.
Yeah, that you bring up one key point with potential new wrinkles. You got a Sean McDermott defense, which is predicated on a lot of pressure packages, a lot more man coverage, and just a defense that is in your face. Unlike a lot of Leslie Frazier's, and this is not to play sour grapes about Leslie Frazier. He was a fantastic defensive coordinator for us. But going into a week one matchup, there's a lot of stuff that, there was tape on the Bills defense. They don't know what they're going to get with the Sean McDermott defense going into week one. So for the Jets, especially for a team that really relished the opportunity to be successful up front, they're going into it with a lot of question marks. I mean, is Breece Hall healthy? What are we getting out of Dalvin Cook at 27 years old, coming off of one of his worst seasons in the NFL with the Vikings last year, where his yards against expectancy was right at the yard marker. He wasn't able to get over that. And then on top of it, their third wide receiver is either Mecole Hardman or Randall Cobb, neither of which are a threatening presence on any side. And then they've got a very, I hate to use the word mid, group of tight ends with Tyler Conklin, Rucker, and CJ Uzomah. I just think if you look at this Jets offense, it's Garrett Wilson, and if Breece Hall is what he was last year coming off of an ACL injury, obviously what Aaron Rodgers brings. His ability to sling the rock. The guy has one of the most talented arms in NFL history, quite frankly, up there with the likes of Elway and Marino. It just comes down to if this team, the Jets team, can put it all together. Now, that's not to say that the Bills don't have question marks. We still don't know what Terrell Bernard is. We have not seen him play outside of a one-game when he played as the will linebacker last year. He didn't play in preseason this year, and a lot of what they know of Terrell Bernard is strictly in practice. Now, there are some glowing remarks about him, but that's a big question mark. And then the other one, Mike, like we're talking about the Jets offensive line, we have to talk about our own. There's some big question marks here. The Bills are trotting out a rookie right guard in Osiris Torrance. Connor McGovern is coming off of a knee injury in preseason where he's going to be wearing a brace on his leg. And then you got Spencer Brown, a big time question mark, a guy that outside of some run grading really has been a kind of a letdown in terms of what they expected. So what are your thoughts going into this matchup in regards to potential question marks or some concerns that you have about the Bills going into this week one matchup?
Yeah, you mentioned some of them right there. Spencer Brown at right tackle is probably the biggest question mark. Is he going to elevate his play this year? We'll see. There's not really much evidence to point out that he will have an ascension, but I do believe that the Bills have the thought inside the locker room that he's a much better player than what he's shown on the field the last 2 years. He obviously wasn't healthy last year, and the Bills are hoping with a fully healthy Spencer Brown that he'll take a step forward this year. The rest of the offensive line, I feel pretty confident in whoever plays at left guard, whether that be McGovern or Edwards, depending on McGovern's health and status going into this week. It looks like he's good to go according to the injury report, so I would assume it would be him. And then Osiris Torrance, I know he's a rookie, but this was a guy that I was pretty high on going into the NFL draft process, and I'm excited to see what he'll bring to the table right off the bat. I don't know if it's going to be great, and maybe it's a little risky having Torrance next to Brown, where the right side of your line might have some vulnerabilities, but I'm not overly concerned about the Bills' offensive line. The Bills had one of the worst lines in football last year, and they still had the number 2 ranked offense in the league. You need to have a decent offensive line, but I find it hard to believe that they'll be any worse than what they were last year. I think this is an improved unit as a whole, and I think they are in a position to be solid offensively once again. They've improved their depth at receiver. Now that you have Kincaid in the mix, the tight end room is one of the best in the entire NFL. So what it really comes down to for me whenever we're talking about the Bills offense is, does Josh Allen get the job done? And 90% of the time he does, but 2 of his biggest struggles last year were against the Jets. The Bills averaged only 18.5 points a game last year in their 2 games against New York. Josh Allen only threw for 176 yards per game in those 2 contests. He had 1 total touchdown pass and 2 interceptions. So if there's a team that Josh struggles against, it has been New York throughout his career. And then there's also some other underlining numbers that were concerning when the Bills played the Jets last year from an offensive perspective. Josh on the season only gets sacked on about 15% of the pressures he faces. Against the Jets last year, those numbers were 30% and 38%. Now, Baker Mayfield was one of the highest numbers in the league over the course of the season. He was around 30%. So what those numbers tell you is when Josh was playing the Jets last year, not only was the offensive line not good, but Josh wasn't reading the Jets defense properly. He wasn't diagnosing it to make the proper reads, because if you're getting sacked on 20% higher rate of the pressures that you're facing, that means you're not seeing the game the same way that you are every other week of the season. So that is something to keep your eyes out. But I think with guys like Deontay Hardy in the mix, with Kincaid in the mix, that'll give him a few more answers than what he had last year. And the last thing I'll talking about the defense and some concerns. I have no concerns about the secondary. I feel confident in every single one of those guys. And I think Benford's going to be pretty solid this year, even if there is some growing pains early on. I'm not overly concerned about the defensive line. I think they're all solid. When healthy, they're a good unit. Just, is Terrell Bernard going to fit in right away? I like him being the starter in this contest. He was the best choice. This is the guy that they wanted to be the starting middle linebacker all offseason. Now he has to go out and show the fan base, show the team, his teammates, why he's the right guy for the job.
Yeah, for sure. In regards to what you're talking about with the offense, with Josh, I mean, the one thing that I keep going back to is the lack of slot receivers last year for the Buffalo Bills. If you look at both of their matchups, you had Diggs and Davis, obviously, as your boundary receivers, and then you had McKenzie in the slot. That was it. And you had Dawson Knox making a couple receptions in both games. But for the most part, he was sitting on the right-hand side as an inline tight end, basically just helping Chip or helping Spencer Brown, keeping Josh Allen clean. This year, that's a different story. And the big thing in regards to the New York Jets, they do have Sauce. They do have DJ Reed. Obviously, they have Michael Carter II. The big question mark is their safeties. And then in regards to their linebackers, obviously they have CJ Mosley, they have Quincy Williams, both very, very good linebackers. But the big one is going to be what the Bills can do in the slot. You just mentioned Deontay Hardy, Trent Sherfield, and then my guy, the guy that I've been pounding the table for, I think everybody has, I can't really say it's my guy, is Dalton Kincaid. I think he is going to be, and I put him in my lineup for this week for fantasy. I think he is going to be kind of their ace in the hole, a guy that could potentially make this game kind of break out. Because when you've seen Josh at his best, his ability to kind of play relaxed, he's had that pressure release valve. He's had that guy that when they send a full out blitz, and the Jets will do that with, the likes of Quincy Williams, and then Quinn Williams, and then off the outside with, Jermaine Johnson or Carl Lawson, or the litany of defensive ends that they've got. And they've got a great rotation on the defensive line. You're going to need to get the ball out early and often. So a guy like, Dalton Kincaid, or, obviously, like I mentioned, Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield are going to provide that ability for him to be more comfortable, to settle into the game. The other thing I think is important, and I think it's something that I think you saw early, but they kind of strayed away from, and it was something that Brian Dable did, which helped Josh, is to get Josh early into a rhythm. Find passes that Josh feels the most comfortable in, that he's able to kind of get a few passes, get a couple quick completions, because once that happened, you saw Josh basically unleash himself. And that's when his true comfort, his true relaxation, where you saw him break out of the pocket or roll out and really kind of create on the flyer, create out of the pocket, was at its best. So I think what you're going to see is a Bills team that provides different matchups that, quite frankly, the Jets just didn't see. Because if you look at the offense in both games, like I said, you had Diggs, you had Davis, you had Knox, McKenzie, and then Cook. That was it. That was your Bills offense. And I don't know about you, and there's nothing wrong about James Cook, but James Cook really wasn't feeling himself until the last probably 6 weeks of the season. Dawson Knox, outside of dealing with Spencer Brown, was really kind of just not himself last year. He was carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders. And then we already know Gabe Davis, high ankle sprain, and Diggs was trying to do everything and anything to make this offense run. I think you're going to see a Bills team that can present so many matchup problems. And I think that's something that starts on week 1. What are your thoughts in regards to this matchup? Is there somebody that you're going to be keeping an eye on for the Buffalo Bills that you think could really, break the camel's back, something that could put them over the top?
I've been saying this a little while. I'm not saying either of these guys are going to be explosive or dynamite week 1, but I really do think Kincaid and Deontay Hardy are two of the players that really make a difference in this contest. Obviously, James Cook too. This offense is going to look different than what it has looked the past couple years. The addition of Kincaid, I know we've been talking about it all offseason, but the 12 personnel is really a game changer for the Bills, especially if Kincaid has any blocking ability at all. You can basically react to whatever the defense is giving you. If they're playing the pass, you can try to pound the rock. If they're playing the run, you can throw it on them. So I really do think this opens a lot of things up. Last year, the Jets, they sat back a lot when they were facing the Bills. They didn't want to give up explosive plays. They trusted their defensive line to get pressure without really needing to do a lot of crazy things. And that gives guys like Josh Allen trouble. Josh likes to make big plays. He likes to be on the run. When he's getting pressured by a 4-man front and there's guys back in coverage, that's the worst case scenario for the Bills offense. That's when trouble happens. And I think now you have some answers to what the Jets can bring to the table. You don't need to just, like you said, overly rely on Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis to carry the offense, because that's what the offense was last year. It was go to those guys. Hopefully they take off and Josh does superhuman stuff. I look to see Deontay Hardy involved in the short passing game where you can just dump the ball off to him and you say, get us 7-8 yards. We'll throw it to the line of scrimmage, get some yards after the catch, or take a slant 10 yards. Find ways to be creative with things. I really do think Deontay Hardy is an under-the-radar player that not enough Bills fans are talking about. Seth Walder, who's with ESPN Analytics, actually went on his bold prediction and said he thinks Deontay Hardy could be the second highest receiving yardage player on the Bills this year. Now, I think that's a little bit too bold for my take, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the top 4 behind guys like Davis, Diggs, and maybe Kincaid. Now, I think it's going to be interesting. You mentioned one of the concerns. My one concern I do have entering this game, What do the Bills do if they struggle out of 12 personnel during the first half, where they can't generate things? The run game is not getting anything going. They're not finding Kincaid. Do they stick with it, or do they throw it in the trash and go back to what they've been good at in the past? I'm really interested to see, because all offseason it's been about 12 personnel. How patient are they going to be if there is any growing pains with it? That I want to know. And then really, I'm expecting good things from this offense. I think it's going to be fun to see how it all comes together on Monday.
Yeah, like you were saying, I think that, we saw in training camp, the very first play of training camp, the very first practice of training camp, they trotted out 12 personnel. We know that they are very, very excited. They know that it has been kind of earmarked as something that they're going to focus on this year in terms of their offense. And like you mentioned, with guys like James Cook, people don't realize that you're running 12 personnel. It then also becomes the possibility of it actually being an offense where James Cook is the slot receiver too. You could go empty. You can have James Cook in the backfield. You can do so many different things. You could, even if you wanted to, and I don't want to bring up Aaron Hernandez, but we're going to do it for the sake of this conversation. You're going to do what they did with Aaron Hernandez, where you could have Dalton Kincaid go into the backfield and line up with Josh. There are so many different things that this offense can do because these guys are so versatile and they're so multiple, that I think this Bills offense does present issues. But like you said, I'm very intrigued to see is if things do start, if they have issues, if there's hiccups into this offense right out of the gate, what do they do? Do they keep running? Because we saw, for the most part, I think last year they ran 12 personnel 6% of the time. Now, mind you, you say less than that?
It might have been even less than that. I don't have the numbers in front of me. One thing, and sorry to cut you off, man.
No.
One thing that is also interesting is last year when Gabe Davis was on the field, they ran shotgun 77% of the time. Now, when Gabe Davis wasn't on the field, they only did shotgun 54% of the time. That is a really telling stat, because it shows that last year when Davis was on the field, they thought they could execute with the 3 wides, with the 4 wides, stuff like that. But when he was off the field, they had to be more creative with how things worked. And one of the things that some smarter football people than me were saying during the offseason was that while it wasn't often that the Bills offense struggled last year, when they would struggle, they would kind of revert back to the same things. So it was almost one of those things where if you were good enough to cause some problems, there was a good chance you were going to be able to continue to cause issues throughout the game. And some of it was because of the Bills' stubbornness to just always assume what they're their best at is going to work. And it didn't, as we saw against Cincinnati. But then some of it was also they didn't have certain personnel to really throw different things at teams. Like we always ask, why did they not do 12 personnel last year more often? Well, they didn't really have the guys in the tight end room to do so. Why did they not execute? Why did they not utilize slot receivers more, the middle of the field more last year? Well, they didn't have trust in Isaiah McKenzie, and Jamison Crowder gets hurt early in the season. So in theory, they should be able to throw a lot more things at opponents this year, and especially the Jets week 1, but it still has to play out. And one thing that should be a beneficial thing for Dalton Kincaid as far as numbers and production, when Cole Beasley was the slot and Josh actually had faith in the slot, he was the second most targeted guy on the team back-to-back seasons. So now that the Bills have a guy like Dalton Kincaid, are they going to lean heavy on him? I think I'll take a patient approach early on and not go too crazy, but I think there's a good chance he's going to get over 50 catches this year.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing that I talked about quite a bit with Cole Beasley is when he left, that was 183 receptions over 2 seasons that the Bills lost. It was a very, very important piece to this offense. And like we mentioned earlier, a very important piece to Josh's just ability to feel comfortable in the offense. I do agree with Dalton Kincaid. I think he's going to become, and we saw quickly in training camp, a trusted asset. And when Josh trusts somebody, they become a very pivotal part of the offense. Gabe Davis, coming out of UCF, very quickly became one of Josh's favorite targets. I think Kincaid will find himself in that same position. In regards to what I was saying about the 6%, this offseason or this training camp, or excuse me, preseason, there was 32% was the amount of times they ran 12 personnel. So they're obviously that's a massive difference. Do I expect that to be all season long? Probably not, but I do anticipate them to run more 12 personnel. I just think that what you're going to see is an offense that, is different. It's an offense that potentially can, like I've said before, present matchups that are going to be difficult, and in today's NFL, you need to be very versatile. You cannot keep trotting the same offense out there all the time. That's why you've seen with the Chiefs every single week will have a different receiver that basically leads in target share because they want to keep really you guessing as to what's going to work. And I think the Bills now have that. And that's something that they wanted to do. I mean, you saw the first 2 weeks of the season when, Jamison Crowder and, Isaiah McKenzie were both there. And you obviously had Jake Kumaro and Gabe Davis was still healthy. They were able to do a lot of different things. They were able to really disguise their coverages and really kind of keep the defense guessing. After all those players went down or Isaiah McKenzie became not as trusted and more of a liability, they were very limited. They couldn't do a whole lot. You obviously had Gabe Davis and Diggs on the outside. You had nobody in the middle. You couldn't flex anybody anywhere. And that's the other big thing. Now that you have guys like Dalton Kincaid who can also run on the outside and on the boundary, you can move guys like Stephon Diggs, which you saw in preseason, into the slot. You can see him run over the middle. Now, I did see somebody mention this, and I did want to touch on it earlier. They had said, they're a little bit nervous about the Jets offense and going over the middle against the Bills. One thing I do want you guys to know and something to keep in mind about Terrell Bernard's biggest calling card coming out of college is he was a coverage linebacker. He was a guy out of Oregon who was fantastic across the middle, very rangy, and it not like, obviously Tremaine Edmonds rangy because he's 6'5" and fast. This was a guy that can play a lot of man-to-man coverage, which Tremaine could just not do. This is somebody that's actually going to be of benefit. Now, you're obviously seeing he's much smaller. He's obviously closer in size to Matt Milano than the alternative, but he's actually not going to be an issue. He's got a ton of speed. He's a very good tackler. And like people have mentioned, he's very good at blitzing. So I think you're not going to be as concerned as it could have been. And I think a lot of people's concerned potentially having Tyrell Dodson out there, because Dodson was a massive question mark in terms of, his ability, or Baylor, you're right, not Oregon, I apologize. Same color scheme. In my mind, I saw one and I got them mixed up. But I think the Bills defense is going to be, and I like what you said, Mike. I'm going to now touch on the defense. I think the Bills defense is going to be potentially even more important this year and even more impactful than the offense. Obviously, the secondary, something that I don't think is talked about enough. If Micah Hyde is able to play, having Micah Hyde for the whole season, I mean, he is just as much of an important green dot, even though he's not the green dot, as Tremaine was last year. His ability to understand and see the defense from the backside, I mean, it was everything to the Bills. And having him alongside Jordan, who are interchangeable because, they're not, one's not a free, one's not a strong. They play interchangeable. It causes defense to have to, or offenses to really have to understand or watch tape on the Bills. And then, like you said, and I liked what Bruce Nolan mentioned, I think Christian Benford could be the Kyle Williams to Kyer Elam being the John McCargo, which that name gives me the willies saying it out loud. I honestly think Christian Benford could be a very impactful piece for this defense. But you obviously have Tre'Davious White coming back this year. Full off season. People are saying, and I've seen, and Mike saw in training camp, looked very smooth, looked very much back to form. But I think the big thing that we got to talk about is this defensive line for the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, we don't have Von Miller back yet, but the likes of having Leonard Floyd, another 6'6", rangy, very, very stout against the run defensive end, playing opposite of Greg Rousseau, who, in the very same sense, very tall, 6'6", rangy, good against the run defensive end. You're going to be able to not have to worry about the C gap and just have, Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano worry about the A and the B gap, which is something that was a big question mark last year because obviously with Vaughn being out or the big question marks with the rest of the defensive ends. Now you have guys that can provide that ability to clamp down on Aaron Rodgers, who likes to peel out of the pocket. The other thing is getting guys like Poona Ford, having Ed Oliver now being healthy, not having that high ankle sprain. What are your thoughts, Mike, on the defensive line? What kind of matchups can it present, and what can it mean to this defense going forward?
Yeah, I think this is a top 10 defensive line in the NFL, with the potential of being even better than that. With Von healthy, this could be a top 5 unit in the league. Now, that doesn't mean they will be. I think we've seen over the course of the last couple of years, when they have their guys at full strength, they can be a force. But a lot of that is being healthy. People remember the Cincinnati game where they were run over and couldn't get pressure on Burrow, despite going up against 3 backup offensive linemen. But then they forget that Daquan Jones wasn't in that game. Jordan Phillips was playing with a torn labrum. That Von Miller wasn't playing in the game. That even Greg Rousseau late in the season was dealing with a high ankle sprain. So there was issues impacting them late in the year that contributed to some of their struggles. Now, overall, I think we've seen enough the last 2 years to know that when this defensive line is performing, they're going to be around 40 to 45 sacks. I think there's a chance they could be even higher than that this year if the Bills end up implementing more pressure looks and being creative with certain things. But you start on the interior. Ed Oliver got his money, which I'm glad they took care of that before the year, so we're not going to have to deal with that all season. But a lot of people were upset with the money. Well, we've seen in the weeks and months since, that deal is probably right around where Ed should be. And if he lives up to his potential or even gets a little bit better, that's going to be a decent deal. I still think Ed's a good player, and he's going to be a solid player on this Bills team for years to come. Daquan Jones was a beast last year. He faced a high percentage of double teams and had one of the highest win rates in the NFL. And when you're looking at the graphs and the numbers. So Daquan Jones is a force on this defensive line. Guys like Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips, Poona Ford, you're hoping that they can complement everybody else. Are they going to be game wreckers? No, but can they make a play here? Can they do their job? I think they're all good enough to be able to contribute in that way. I love this defensive end room. Right now, Leonard Floyd and Greg Rousseau, even without Von, you look at those 2 defensive ends and you're like, that's a good starting unit. 2 guys that have double-digit sack potential. Not saying they'll get there, but we know Floyd has been right around that 9.5, 10 number the last 3 seasons. Greg Rousseau was going to have double-digit sacks last year, if not for missing some action. I like the backups too. I know everybody's been hard on AJ Epineza because of his struggles his first 2 years, but he really did take a step forward last year. He had 6.5 sacks. He had limited action, and his pass pressure rate. His pressure rate was actually pretty solid for the amount of snaps that he was playing. So I think they're good at the starters and the backups. And once Von comes back, that rotation should be nasty. And we'll see if Kingsley Jonathan or Shaq Lawson, who ends up being the one that probably gets relegated to the practice squad when Von comes back. But I like this D-line. I'm excited about it. I know you brought up the secondary. I can't say anything really bad about the secondary with Poyer and Hyde back. That's going to allow them to disguise so much more. But they see things the same way. They work in tandem. You have Trey a year off back, an extra year back after the ACL injury. I think we're going to see a good version of Trey again. You still have Taron Johnson. You have Matt Milano at outside linebacker. There's really only like 1 or 2 question marks on this entire defense. As long as they don't regress due to age, this defense is still a top 3 to 5 unit in the NFL.
Right. And I think the big question mark really outside of the pure talent is just coaching and seeing what kind of defense Sean McDermott implements. And if it is more aggressive, then you could see this defense, which I think is something that whether it was Jim Schwartz, a little bit more of the Dick Duran defense or the Rex Ryan, a lot more turnovers, because when you see a lot of more pressure packages, that's a lot more mistakes and a lot more turnovers, interceptions, fumbles. which then become the opportunity for this offense to get back on the field, obviously. So I think this is big time.
I will say this, though. I don't think they necessarily need to be more aggressive all the time. I think they more so need to be more aggressive and opportunistic against the right opponents. When you're playing teams that are beneath you, that you're easily cruising against or should cruise against, you can still do what you've been doing the last couple of years. Like, everybody hates on Leslie Frazier for what the Bills have done defensively over the course of the last 5 years, but they've been one of the best defenses in the league during that time. And to me, it's kind of ironic that we're saying that he wasn't good enough when he had some of the best defenses in football. It's more so his defense that he was running stylistically was to play from ahead. When you jump out to 7-10 point leads, you play coverage, you force teams into mistakes because they're trying to throw it on you, and you just put teams away. The Bills have had some of the top point differentials in recent years because of that type of defense. Now, if they do get more aggressive, if they start throwing more things at the table, there's a potential that they might not be as good on a game-by-game basis, where they might be a little bit more inconsistent. They might go down a few in the yards per game, points per game categories. But then when you have an important game against Cincinnati or Kansas City, you might be able to bring it and actually hold them under 20 points rather than always let them get 24 to 30 points every time you have a big contest.
Yeah, that's what it's going to come down to, is these kind of just little details that are going to make or break this season. I think we've already covered, with this matchup alone, there are so many intricacies that we're going to be keeping an eye on and how they kind of play into the rest of the season. But let's get into tonight's big matchup, Mike. Obviously, the NFL season is here. We are starting tonight at 8:20 on NBC. There's a big game. You got the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs against the kneecap-biting media darlings, the Detroit Lions, who hold probably my favorite receiver in the NFL, Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy that is, I think, one of the most unguardable receivers in the NFL at this present moment. Mike, what are your thoughts about this matchup heading in tonight?
Yeah, so I think it's a big opportunity for Detroit to show the world what they're capable of. You have no Kelsey, no Chris Jones. It's there for the taking. If the Lions want to show they're a contender and that they are one of the big boys, this is a great opportunity. Now, I don't think they're quite at that level yet, so I still think Kansas City is going to come out with the victory tonight. But with that said, it's there for the Lions to surprise the nation right off the bat. And I do think Detroit is a solid team. If you put them in the AFC, they're probably not a playoff team, but in the NFC, I think they're clearly one of the top 7 teams in the conference heading into the year. Jared Goff is one of those guys where people love to hate him, but you actually look at his numbers, you break it down. He's been a good quarterback throughout his career. I won't say he's top 10, but Jared Goff is definitely close to that 11, 12, 13 mark as far as quarterbacks in the league. And you can look at his numbers last year just to prove it. And so it's kind of ironic how when he was traded to Detroit for Stafford, how that deal has actually ended up working out for both teams. Stafford got his ring, LA got their ring. But in the long run, Detroit is going to capitalize more off of it because they unloaded a veteran before his downfall when they weren't ready to contend yet. And they brought in a younger quarterback that will bridge them, at worst case scenario, bridge them to someone better down the line. But for now, carry them a bit. I like the weapons that Detroit has. It sucks that Jameson Williams is going to be out the first 6 games of the year because I think he can be electric once he gets out there. The running game, they got some talent in their backfield. Defensively, they brought in some quality free agents. I think Detroit could be a 9-10 win team list this year and win that NFC North.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, being in the NFC is a wide open, avenue for really any team. And I think the Lions are in the best opportunity right now. I think tonight's matchup is going to be interesting. I mean, not having Travis Kelce, not having Chris Jones, those are your number 2, your number 3 best player on that team. Obviously, still having Patrick Mahomes puts you in the advantageous position to win any matchup, and having the likes of Andy Reid as your offensive coordinator / head coach also presents matchup problems. I think the big thing here is, what does this Chiefs offense look like? And I mean, it's a great opportunity for us as Bills fans, as content creators, or just people watching the game, to really get a feel as to what this offense looks like outside of Travis Kelce, because obviously it's second year Sky Moore. You've got MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then a bunch of question marks. You got Noah Gray, who's your backup tight end. You got Justin Ross, who was an undrafted wide receiver out of Clemson, who had some back issues, but is showing a ton of promise. There's a lot of weapons on that Chiefs team, but what are they? What are they without? And then you've got Isaiah Pacheco, you got Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The team is very, very interesting. It's just, if they don't have Travis Kelce, and the anticipation is that his injury is going to be very short-lived, if this happens, you want to know what this offense looks like, because the other part about it is Travis Kelce's 34 years old. That runway is getting shorter and shorter as the day comes by. And with injuries like this, those are going to play a long-term role in a guy like him, because you saw what happened with Rob Gronkowski towards the end of his career. Those nicks and bruises just eventually caught up to him, where he just wasn't a guy anymore and he couldn't really live into the NFL. I'm intrigued to see what this Chiefs offense looks like. But even more than that, I think the big question mark and what this Chiefs defense is, because this is going to play as to how the Bills are going to play into them later. Obviously, we know there's a chance we could end up in Arrowhead. This AFC is going to be incredibly tight. There's going to be a lot of teams vying for that number one seed, or even trying to get through to the playoffs. What are your thoughts, and what are you looking for tonight with the Chiefs to kind of keep an eye on, maybe as an earmark for later down the road?
I mean, that's a tough one to answer, because I feel like the last 2 years with the Bills winning in the regular season, I got to the point each year where I was thinking internally, this team has everything they need. We're where we need to be at to win it all. And then each year, something unforeseen ended up happening that cut them short in the playoffs. So I don't really worry about, from watching this game tonight, what will that mean for the Bills when they take on Kansas City. I'm more so, when it gets to be late December, January, can the Bills play their best football, and can we have a Bills team playing their best football at the right time, which outside of 2021, we really haven't seen that in recent years. I know they've had win streaks going into the playoffs, but last year they weren't playing their best heading into the Cincinnati game. And then 2020, obviously, they weren't ready for what Kansas City brought to the table. My thing with KC, I think the Bills are one of the few teams in the league actually equipped to go toe-to-toe with them. But I think in order to beat Kansas City when it matters the most, you have to play a near flawless game. Kansas City does not make the mistakes in the big games. They capitalize off of your mistakes. So regardless of what they do today, it doesn't really change the formula. You're going to have to, if you play them in the playoffs, play your best game and hope that you don't have any crucial errors at crucial moments.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there anybody fantasy-wise that you are keeping a tab on for tonight for your own personal interest?
I have nobody in either of these teams, so there's no one today for me. Yeah, I'm waiting until Sunday. I got a weird fantasy team. I'm not even excited about my team. I think my team's going to be awful this year. But I had the last pick in the first round, and it was a long, long night. I got Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, and then after that, it's not a great roster. So hopefully you have a much better roster, and we'll have a much more enjoyable fantasy season.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fun guys. Jahmyr Gibbs, Mr. Non-Position, as they call him. It should be a lot of fun to watch tonight. Obviously, my guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think is, potentially going to, kind of light it up. I'm intrigued to see, if Jared Goff continues on. And, like you said, that trade it seemed like it was one-sided initially for the Rams, but Detroit got 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and Jared Goff, who, no, he's not going to blow the doors off of anybody, but he's serviceable, which is exactly what you need in Detroit style offense. I think it's just this team is going to be a lot of fun to watch for a long time. And then when Jamison Williams comes back, it's going to be a bit, big, intriguing.
He's the one
kind
guy
of
I have on Detroit. So
okay.
I took a late round flyer on Jamison, figuring he's going to help me down the stretch. I anticipate him being one of my starting receivers heading into the fantasy football playoffs.
For sure. I think this matchup's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see just kind of how this shakes out. I agree. I think that, with the Chiefs, you do have to play a damn near perfect game. We saw 13 seconds. Things went a little bit sideways and they capitalized on very, the margin of error, fraction of a mistake, and they were able to jump right in there and catch right back up quickly. So I think tonight's going to be a lot of fun for NFL fans. Mike, what are your final thoughts in regards to the NFL season heading into this first week?
I'm just excited. I think the AFC, as everybody's been saying all offseason, absolutely loaded. There's 12 teams that are playoff caliber in this conference. The NFC is the exact opposite. There might be 4 to 5 teams in the entire conference that I really even respect. So you kind of have these uneven conferences right now where you're going to have teams get into the playoffs in the NFC that aren't really even that good, while you're going to have quality teams in the AFC come up short. I'm excited for the season to come here, mostly because I'm just tired of all the offseason narratives. I think this has been one of the most exhausting off seasons from Bills fandom that I've ever experienced in my life. Obviously, I was way too young during the Super Bowl years to really remember any of that, but most of my Bills fandom was it started with Flutie Johnson. That was a mess, but then it was like 17 years of, is this our year that we're going to end the drought? And then it went to just general excitement about being good. This was the first year where it was kind of the narrative was the Bills aren't good enough to get it done, that the Jets and the Dolphins have surpassed them. And I don't know if that's more the national media trying to get clicks or if it's people actually believing what they're saying. Maybe a mixture of both. But I just, my general opinion is that there was a lot of lazy, uninformed takes out there for clicks. And I just want to see it play out to see who ends up being right on this. This Bills team, to me, is still one of the best teams in the NFL. Vegas thinks so. The metrics think so. The power indexes think so. So I'm kind of using this year as a barometer of how I'm going to be analyzing teams in the offseason going forward. Am I going to do the media test where I'm just following what the narratives are out there, or am I going to trust what I think are the smarter, more informed ways of evaluating teams?
Yeah, I couldn't couldn't agree more. This offseason has it's been too much. It's been too much this year, too many storylines, and especially after last year and all the very emotional trauma that this team went through, the roller coasters, the injuries, getting into the season and getting into it pretty much unscathed, only having just Micah Hyde's lower back soreness on the injury report is unbelievable heading into this year. A lot of people not talking about the Bills, but some important people, guys like Aaron Schatz, picking the Bills to win the Super Bowl. Very smart guys talking about the Bills and, kind of standing behind them.
That one is worth more than anybody else making a pick, in my opinion. Like, you have one very, very, very smart person who knows a ton about football, how to use the metrics, and he thinks the Bills are good. Am I going to trust that, or am I going to trust Mike Florio? I think I'm going to trust the smart person instead of the person that just puts out articles about the Bills moving to Houston, or are the Patriots going to finish ahead of the Bills in the AFC East? I'm going to trust the person that actually deserves a little bit of respect with their quality of work.
Yeah, it's tough. There's so many people talking nowadays and giving you whatever they think about whatever they want. It's nice to hear a very intelligent person speaking what we already know. This Bills team is good, and I've said this a couple of times. If people watching or people are going to listen tomorrow or watch the recording of this show, which I greatly appreciate. I know Mike appreciates, all of us at Cover One appreciate. Guys, enjoy this. Enjoy this time to bet the Bills are good. You know, Mike just mentioned a second ago that he was too young to remember the Super Bowl years, as was I. I think we're very close in age. It's like that. It goes by so quickly, and as soon as we blink, I mean, this is the first year without Breeze, Brady, or Manning since 1996. These guys, Josh Allen will be gone before you know it. I mean, these guys' careers are so fast. It's so fleeting. Enjoy this. This is a very good team, and it only got better this offseason with a lot of very good talent. Brandon Beane has consistently had an influx of talent every year, and this year is no different. In fact, it's probably better than it was in previous years. But enjoy it. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy tonight. Enjoy football. Enjoy real live NFL, having an annoying, referee come on the screen to tell you what you already knew from the first place. But Mike, why don't you tell people where they can find you and Kevin Masseri?
Yeah, they can find me and Kevin Masseri every Tuesday night at 7 on the Going Deep podcast, part of the Cover One Network. We're on Twitter at Going Deep Pod. You can find me. You can see my handle below, Mike_Bunt. We're getting right into things right now. Obviously, Bills play Monday Night Football. We're going to be your first chance outside of the post-game show afterwards to really either celebrate or vent about what we see on Monday Night Football. And it's going to be like that on a weekly basis. We're going to be talking about each matchup. We have guests each week, for the most part, from opposing teams, media guys, sometimes more higher profile fans, depending on the situation. But definitely welcome anyone to join us. We like to engage with the chat and interact with everybody. So Tuesday 7, I can't wait to talk all of you guys then.
Yeah, guys, make sure you check it out. Fantastic show, the Going Deep podcast, as well as all the shows on the Cover One Network. Really, really good stuff. You can find this show, Buffalo Late Night, now on 7 p.m. Eastern. Moved it up because obviously with Thursday Night Football, didn't want to try to compete. But as always, guys, I truly do appreciate you spending some time with us. One thing I do want to say, as I always say, be kind to each other. Tell somebody you love them. Give somebody a call that is important to you. If you haven't talked to somebody in a while, pick up the phone, give them a call, tell them you love them, tell them you're thinking about them. It means a lot. Some people need it. You don't even realize it. But for all of us here at Cover One, I truly do appreciate it. Enjoy football tonight. Enjoy Monday night. Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, Monday Night Football. First game of the season. It's going to be a lot of fun. We all appreciate you here at Cover One. We will see you next Thursday. Go Bills.
The Bills make me wanna. The Bills make me wanna.